The grand hall of the Zenthari Empire shimmered under golden light. Hundreds of alien nobles stood in silence, their eyes fixed on the giant silver doors at the end of the room. The air was thick with pride, fear, and expectation. Today was not a normal day. Today, the humans had arrived. The alien Princess Liara sat on her crystal throne, her silver eyes calm but curious. Her heart beat a little faster as she looked toward the doors. She had heard stories of the humans, beings from a death world, creatures that survived storms, hunger, and fire. They were said to be dangerous, unpredictable, and untamed. Yet something deep inside her wanted to see one for herself. The council whispered among themselves, "Why send a soldier instead of a diplomat?" One elder asked, "Because they only understand war." Another replied. Liara frowned at their words. For years, her empire had called humans savages. But the stories she read told a different tale. Humans were strong because they had to be, brave because their world demanded it. Suddenly, the giant doors opened with a deep metallic echo. The hall fell into complete silence. A single figure stepped inside. A tall man wearing a dark uniform, his shoulders broad, his eyes sharp like a blade. His boots clicked against the marble floor. Every alien guard tightened their grip on their weapons. He walked with calm confidence, each step steady and sure. He carried no weapon, yet the air around him felt heavy, as if the hall itself respected his presence. Princess Liara's breath caught in her throat. The human looked nothing like the monsters the council had described. His face showed no fear, only quiet strength. The Emperor of Zynar rose from his throne. "You are Commander Ethan Cade of Earth," he said. "You stand before the Empire of 1,000 stars. Speak." Ethan bowed slightly. "I bring greetings from Earth and its people," he said, his voice deep and steady. "We come seeking peace and trade, not conquest." His words echoed through the hall. A murmur spread among the nobles. Some laughed softly, others sneered. "Peace from Deathworlders?" One alien whispered. "Impossible," said another. The Emperor raised his hand, and silence returned. Liara studied the human carefully. His uniform was worn, marked by battle scars, but his eyes held a strange calm. Not arrogance, not fear, something stronger, something unbroken. She felt a strange pull toward him, a spark she could not explain. The High Counselor stepped forward, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Human, tell us, how can your kind offer peace when your history is full of war?" Ethan met his gaze without blinking. "Because we know the cost of war," he said. "We have seen cities burn, worlds tremble, and people suffer. That is why we value peace." The hall went silent again. For a moment, even the Emperor hesitated. Liara's eyes widened slightly. No alien had ever spoken to the council with such courage, and yet the human did not sound proud. He sounded honest. One noble snorted. "Perhaps he speaks well, but words are cheap. Let him prove his worth." The Emperor nodded slowly. "Perhaps you are right, Counselor, Commander Cade. Will you face a test of honor?" Ethan's jaw tightened slightly. "If that is what it takes to earn your trust," he said. The room stirred with excitement. Aliens whispered eagerly about the coming challenge, but Liara's heart filled with worry. The test of honor was a deadly ritual designed to humiliate outsiders. 3 alien warriors would challenge him in the arena, and no one had ever survived. She looked at the human again. He stood tall, motionless, his eyes fixed on the Emperor. Not once did he look afraid. In fact, a faint smile curved at the edge of his lips, as if he already knew what awaited him. As the court prepared to move to the arena, Liara leaned closer to her father. "Father," she whispered, "this test is not honor, it's cruelty." But the Emperor only said, "If he is truly strong, he will endure." When Ethan turned slightly, his gaze met hers. For a single heartbeat, the world around them vanished. The noise, the light, the crowd, everything faded. Liara's heart stopped for just that moment. Something unspoken passed between them, something powerful. Then the guards stepped forward, leading Ethan toward the arena gates. The heavy doors closed behind him, leaving the hall in an uneasy silence. The nobles whispered, the Emperor watched, but Liara sat frozen, her thoughts spinning. For the first time in her life, she felt fear, not for herself, but for someone she had just met. And deep inside her, a voice whispered softly, "This human will change everything." The arena beneath the grand hall was vast and glowing with alien energy. Circular walls of crystal pulsed with light as thousands of spectators filled the stands. They had gathered to witness a human's defeat. To them, it was not a contest. It was entertainment. Commander Ethan Cade stood in the center of the ring, alone. The air was hot and heavy. The sound of alien drums echoed through the chamber. His eyes stayed calm, watching, waiting. He had faced worse on Earth. He had fought on burning soil where gravity pulled harder and storms tore metal apart. Compared to that, this arena felt almost peaceful. High above, Princess Liara sat in the royal box. Her hands gripped the edge of her seat. She wanted to look brave, but fear twisted inside her chest. She knew what this test of honor really was, a death sentence. The Emperor's voice thundered, "Let the trial begin." 3 alien warriors stepped out from the opposite gate, each one larger than Ethan, their bodies covered in gleaming armor. One had four arms and carried twin plasma blades, another had claws that sparked with lightning, and the last one, a giant reptilian beast, carried a hammer taller than Ethan himself. The crowd roared as the fighters pounded their chests. Ethan only smiled slightly. He bowed, his voice calm. "I will fight, but I will not kill." The crowd hissed in anger. "Arrogant human," someone shouted. The Emperor frowned, but Liara's eyes widened. This was not pride, it was restraint. The gong rang, and the first warrior charged. His plasma blade sliced the air, glowing blue. Ethan moved like a shadow, sliding aside, grabbing the alien's arm and flipping him to the ground with a single precise motion. The crowd gasped. The alien struck again, but Ethan dodged every blow with perfect timing. He wasn't faster. He was smarter. Liara's heart raced. Every motion of his body looked like art. His calm face never changed. His movements were not driven by anger, but by control. She whispered softly, "He's holding back." The second warrior joined the fight, lightning crackling from his claws. Sparks lit the air. Ethan jumped back, letting the energy burn the ground where he stood moments ago. Then he grabbed a broken chain from the arena floor and wrapped it around the alien's arm, pulling hard. The creature stumbled, roaring. Ethan pushed him to the ground and stepped away, refusing to strike. The crowd was silent for the first time. Even the Emperor leaned forward, watching closely. The human wasn't just surviving, he was teaching them something. Then came the last warrior, the giant with the hammer. The floor shook as he charged, his weapon smashed into the ground, sending waves of energy across the arena. Ethan fell to one knee, dust covering his uniform. Liara's heart stopped for a second. The alien roared, lifting the hammer again, but before the next strike could land, Ethan rolled forward. RD grabbed a piece of fallen armor and struck the hammer's joint. The weapon broke apart with a metallic scream. The giant froze, shocked. Ethan rose to his feet slowly, his breathing steady, and said quietly, "Enough." The arena fell completely silent. Thousands of eyes stared at him. The human stood, unarmed, his uniform torn, yet his presence filled the space like a storm. He turned to the Emperor and said, "Humanity does not fight to destroy. We fight to protect. Even here, I will not take a life." The Emperor's expression hardened. He was silent for a long moment. Then the crowd erupted, some in rage, others in awe. The High Counselor shouted, "He mocks our ways. He refuses the honor of combat." But before the Emperor could answer, Princess Liara stood. Her voice rang clear through the hall. "He shows more honor than any of us," she said. The crowd turned toward her in shock. The Emperor looked furious, but her words hung in the air like a blade. Ethan looked up at her. Their eyes met once again. And in that silent exchange, Liara saw not a warrior, but a man who carried the pain of 1,000 battles, and still chose mercy. The Emperor finally raised his hand, silencing everyone. "Enough," he said. "The trial is complete. The human has survived, but he will not be trusted yet." Guards stepped forward, surrounding Ethan. He didn't resist. He simply looked at Liara one last time and gave a small nod. It wasn't fear or defeat, it was a promise. As he was led away from the arena, Liara's heart pounded. She knew the council would never forgive what had just happened. But deep inside, she also knew something undeniable. The moment that human entered their world, the balance of power began to shift, and somewhere beyond those cold marble walls, destiny was waiting for both of them. The arena was quiet now, but the silence did not bring peace. It was the kind of silence that waited before a storm. The alien nobles whispered among themselves, still shaken by what they had seen. A human had faced 3 elite warriors and walked away alive. It was something their empire had never imagined possible. Commander Ethan Cade stood near the edge of the arena, his body covered in dust and bruises. He breathed slowly, controlling the pain in his ribs. The alien guards surrounded him again, waiting for the Emperor's final judgment. From the royal balcony, Princess Liara's gaze never left him. Her hands trembled, hidden in her lap. She could not understand this man. He came from a death world, a planet that raised monsters, and yet his heart held more mercy than any ruler she had ever known. The High Counselor broke the silence, his voice sharp. "Your Majesty, this is a trick," he said. "The human pretends to be noble to deceive us. He hides his violence behind false peace." The Emperor frowned deeply. "Perhaps you are right, Counselor," he said. "Or perhaps we have misjudged a species." Liara's eyes flickered with hope. But the counselor wasn't finished. He smiled coldly. "If he is truly peaceful, let him face one final trial, one that tests the mind and the heart." The crowd murmured. The Emperor looked interested. "Speak," he said. The counselor bowed. "A trial of judgment. Let the human face the beast of Zynar, our sacred guardian. If he kills it, he will prove his violence. If he spares it, the beast will kill him. Either way, the truth will be revealed." The audience erupted with cruel excitement. Liara's heart dropped. She knew what the beast of Zynar was, a creature bred for destruction, a monster of claws and venom. Nothing had ever survived its wrath. Ethan looked up at the Emperor and said calmly, "So be it." The massive steel gates opened again, and a low growl echoed from the darkness. The ground trembled as a shadow stepped forward. The creature was twice his size, its skin armored like obsidian, its eyes glowing red. Steam rose from its mouth as it roared, shaking the arena walls. The guards quickly stepped back. The crowd chanted, "Zynar! Zynar! Zynar!" The Emperor watched in silence, his expression unreadable. Liara felt her chest tighten. Ethan didn't move. He stood still, watching, measuring. His hand slowly reached toward his belt, where no weapon waited. The beast charged, claws slicing the air. Ethan rolled to the side, dust exploding around him. He grabbed a fallen spear from the ground and spun it in his hand. The battle began. The human and the beast moved like lightning. The creature struck again and again, but Ethan's training showed in every motion. He ducked under claws, deflected blows, and leaped across the arena floor with deadly precision. The spear struck the beast's shoulder, but it only roared louder. Liara stood, unable to breathe. "Please," she whispered, "don't die." Ethan's spear broke under the creature's massive tail. He was thrown to the ground, his chest hitting the dust. The crowd screamed in delight. The beast lunged forward, claws ready to tear him apart. At the last moment, Ethan grabbed a shard of crystal from the floor and plunged it into the creature's leg. The beast howled, stumbling. Ethan jumped on its back, wrapping the broken chain around its neck. His muscles strained as he pulled, the creature thrashing wildly. For a long moment, it seemed endless. Man and monster locked in a deadly struggle. Then, with one last heave, Ethan twisted and pulled. The creature collapsed, trembling, but still alive. Ethan released the chain and stepped back, breathing hard. He looked down at the beast, which now lay motionless but breathing. He dropped the chain and said quietly, "Enough. I will not kill you." The arena fell into stunned silence. No one moved, no one spoke. Even the Emperor seemed frozen. Ethan turned toward the royal balcony and looked directly at Liara. Dust covered his face, sweat glistened on his skin, but his eyes were calm. "Humans are not what you think we are," he said softly. "We fight only when we must." Liara felt tears in her eyes. She saw truth in his words, not weakness, but power, the kind that changes worlds. The Emperor slowly rose from his seat. "Release him," he ordered. "The trial is over." The crowd erupted again, half in disbelief, half in fear. The guards lowered their weapons. Ethan stood straight, his breathing steady. As he was escorted back toward the gates, Liara whispered to herself, "He could have killed it, but he didn't." The High Counselor turned to the Emperor, his tone full of venom. Majesty, he defied our traditions. He humiliated our warriors. We cannot let him live. The Emperor's gaze was cold. He has earned his right to live, he said, but not yet our trust. Liara looked down, her heart torn between duty and something far stronger. As the human disappeared beyond the arena doors, she felt the echo of his words in her mind. We fight only when we must. And she knew, deep inside, that her world was about to change forever. Night fell over the Zenthari capital like a dark ocean. Stars shimmered above the golden towers, their light soft against the city's crystal domes. The grand hall was silent now, but whispers about the human still echoed through every corridor. Some called him a monster, others a miracle. Princess Liara stood alone on her balcony, the wind brushing against her silver hair. Her mind was restless. The memory of the arena still burned behind her eyes. The way Ethan had faced death without fear, the way he had spared the creature. She had never seen courage like that. It haunted her. She looked down at the courtyard below. The guards patrolled lazily, unaware of her plans. In her hand, she held a small key made of black steel, the key to the lower cells. She knew what she was about to do was treason, but her heart refused to listen to fear. Slowly, she cloaked herself in a dark robe and stepped into the night. Her footsteps were silent on the marble floor. She moved like a shadow through the hidden passageways of the palace. Every turn, every stair was carved in her memory since childhood. Yet tonight, the path felt heavier, more dangerous. At the end of a long corridor, she reached a steel door, guarded by 2 sentinels. Her voice was steady as she spoke. The Emperor commands me to inspect the prisoner. The guards looked uncertain, but her royal seal gleamed in the dim light. They stepped aside. The door creaked open. The dungeon smelled of cold metal and silence. Blue lights glowed faintly from the walls, casting long shadows. In the last cell sat the human, Commander Ethan Cade, his uniform torn, his hands bruised, yet when he looked up, his eyes still burned with that same calm strength. Liara stepped closer, her heart pounding. You should not be here, Ethan said quietly. His voice was soft but carried the weight of a soldier's warning. Neither should you, she replied, trying to sound bold but failing. You faced death today and refused to kill. Why? Ethan looked at her through the bars. Because killing does not make peace, he said. I came here to prove that humanity has changed. We fight because we must, not because we want to. Liara's eyes softened. You speak of peace like it is possible, she whispered, but our worlds have only known war. Ethan smiled faintly. Someone has to start believing it first. For a moment, silence filled the air between them. Only the faint hum of the palace engines could be heard. Liara felt something shift inside her, something fragile but powerful. She had been raised to see humans as dangerous, yet now, looking at this man, she saw something else entirely. Hope. She reached into her cloak and handed him a small piece of bread and a flask of water. Ethan accepted them with a nod. Thank you, Princess, he said. Call me Liara, she said quietly. I am not your enemy. Ethan looked into her eyes, and for the first time since his capture, he allowed himself to breathe freely. Then you are the first friend I've found on this world, he said. Liara smiled faintly, but the sound of approaching footsteps broke the moment. She froze. Guards, she whispered. They're coming. Without hesitation, she pulled the hood over her head and stepped back into the shadows. The door opened and 2 guards entered. One sneered at the human. Still alive, he said, striking the bars with his staff. Ethan didn't react. He simply stood, calm as stone. Liara waited until the guards left again, then she turned back to him. Her voice trembled slightly. They plan to move you tomorrow to a place you won't return from. Ethan's jaw tightened. Then I'll need to escape before that, he said. You can't fight the whole empire, she said, panic flashing in her eyes. He looked at her with quiet certainty. I don't need to fight it, he said. I just need one ally. For a moment, Liara hesitated, torn between her loyalty to the crown and her heart. But the image of him standing in the arena, sparing the beast instead of killing it, burned in her mind. She made her choice. I will help you, she said finally. But if they find out, they'll destroy us both. Ethan gave a faint smile. Then we'll have to make sure they don't. Liara pressed her hand against the cold metal of his cell. Tomorrow, when the moons align, the guards change shifts for exactly 6 minutes, she whispered. I'll open the southern gate. Be ready. Ethan nodded. I'll be there. She turned to leave, her heart racing. As she reached the door, Ethan spoke softly. Princess? She stopped. Why are you helping me? Liara looked back at him, her voice barely, above a whisper. Because when you walked into the hall, I saw something I've never seen before, she said. A man who could stop a war with kindness. Then she disappeared into the dark corridor, leaving only the echo of her footsteps. Ethan sat back, staring at the flickering light above him. A small smile touched his lips. Kindness, he murmured. The galaxy has forgotten what that means. And somewhere above him, beneath the silver moonlight, the alien princess looked up at the stars, knowing her world would never be the same again. The first light of dawn crept over the palace towers, turning the sky into a soft shade of gold. The great city of Zenthari began to stir, unaware that a storm was waiting inside its walls. Princess Liara hadn't slept. Her mind was a battlefield of fear and hope. Every tick of the clock brought her closer to the moment she had promised, the moment to free the human. She stood at her mirror, her hands trembling as she adjusted her royal crest. She had never broken a law before, yet today she would betray her entire empire for one man. Meanwhile, deep beneath the palace, Commander Ethan Cade sat quietly in his cell. The chains around his wrists felt lighter now. His thoughts were sharp, precise. He was a soldier. He understood risk, but this time he wasn't fighting for orders or honor. He was fighting for trust. Footsteps echoed down the corridor. Ethan looked up, expecting Liara. Instead, the High Counselor appeared, his face cold and proud. Behind him came 2 guards carrying energy rifles. So, the counselor said softly, the great human hero sits in chains. He stepped closer, his eyes full of hate. You embarrassed us in the arena. You made the princess question her loyalty. You think your words of peace will save you? Ethan stayed silent. His eyes didn't waver. The counselor leaned closer, his voice a whisper. Do you know why we fear your kind, Deathworlder? Because you don't know when to die. He struck Ethan across the face, but the human didn't move. The counselor smiled. Cruelly, you'll be moved soon, to a place where your peace will be buried forever. As he left, Ethan's eyes followed him with quiet defiance. Somewhere deep inside, he knew something had gone wrong. Up above, Liara hurried through the corridors. She reached the southern gate, her heart racing. The guards were about to change shifts just like she planned. She took out the small key, but before she could use it, a hand grabbed her wrist. Going somewhere, princess? Liara froze. It was General Threx, the Emperor's most loyal soldier. His reptilian eyes narrowed as he looked at her cloak and trembling hands. You should not be here, he said, unless you have something to hide. She tried to speak calmly. I was inspecting the guard rotations. Threx smiled darkly. At dawn? Without your escort? He glanced at the key in her hand and his expression hardened. You betray your blood, he hissed. Before she could answer, he snatched the key and signaled the guards. Arrest her. The soldiers stepped forward, grabbing her arms. No, she shouted, struggling. You don't understand. He's innocent. Threx leaned close, his voice low and full of venom. Innocence is a story told by the weak. As they dragged her away, she caught one last glimpse of the horizon, the rising sun burning red. Her plan was shattered, but her resolve hardened. Back in the dungeon, Ethan felt the tremor of footsteps and the sudden alarm bells echoing through the walls. He knew immediately. The plan had failed. He pulled against the chains with all his strength. The metal cracked, sparks flying, but the door opened before he could break free. General Threx entered, smiling coldly. Your little friend has been caught, he said. She will face judgment for treason, and you will witness it. Ethan's eyes darkened. If you touch her, Threx laughed. You'll do what? You're just a man in chains, but Ethan's gaze didn't falter. That's where you're wrong, he said quietly. Humans don't need weapons to fight. In a sudden burst, he pulled hard, snapping the weakened chain. The sound echoed like thunder. Threx stepped back in shock, but before he could draw his weapon, Ethan grabbed his wrist and threw him against the wall. The guards fired, energy bolts striking the cell bars. Ethan rolled, grabbed Threx's fallen blaster, and fired back. The explosion shattered the corridor lights, alarms blaring across the palace. Liara, still in the council chamber under arrest, heard the sound of fighting. The Emperor turned sharply. "What is happening?" The High Counselor bowed slightly. "The human has escaped, Majesty." The Emperor's face darkened. "Then finish it. Bring me his head." But Liara stood, fire in her eyes. "No," she shouted. "You will not kill him." The council gasped. The Emperor's voice thundered. "You dare defy your father?" Tears filled her eyes, but her voice didn't break. "He showed us mercy. He fought with honor. He spared our lives, and this is how we repay him." The Emperor's expression faltered for the first time. The room was silent except for the distant echoes of battle. Meanwhile, Ethan fought his way through the corridors, every move calculated. He didn't shoot to kill, only to disable. The palace guards fell one by one, stunned but alive. Smoke filled the air. The human soldier moved like a ghost, unstoppable. He reached the royal hall. The massive doors blown open by a blast. At the top of the stairs stood Liara, her wrists still bound. "Ethan," she breathed. He looked up at her, his chest heaving. "I'm getting you out of here," he said. Guards swarmed in from every corner. The Emperor shouted, "Stop him!" But Liara broke free of her chains and ran toward Ethan. The crowd gasped as the human caught her hand. For a moment, time itself seemed to stop. Behind them, the floor shook as alarms screamed across the city. The Emperor stared down at two. Hem, torn between wrath and disbelief, his daughter, the heir to the throne, was standing beside a human, defying everything the Empire stood for. Liara looked up at him and said, "If you want to see the truth, Father, then look into his eyes. Humanity is not our enemy. They are our mirror." Her words silenced the hall, even as smoke drifted through the broken doors. Ethan's ship was already inbound, its engines shaking the skies. And in that moment, everyone realized the age of alien superiority was ending. The palace burned under the morning sun. Smoke rose into the sky like dark wings spreading across the capital. Sirens echoed through the streets as soldiers rushed in every direction. The Empire had not seen such chaos in centuries. Commander Ethan Cade led Princess Liara through the broken corridors. His arm was bleeding, but he didn't slow down. "This way," he said, his voice steady. "We have to reach the outer gates before they seal the city." Liara's heart pounded. The marble halls that once felt safe now felt like a cage. "They'll kill you if we're caught," she whispered. Ethan glanced back, a faint smile on his face. "Then we won't get caught." Blaster fire echoed behind them. The guards had found their trail. Energy bolts scorched the walls as the pair ducked through a hidden passage. The air smelled of dust and heat. Liara stumbled, but Ethan caught her, his hand steady on her shoulder. "Stay close," he said. "You're not alone anymore." They moved through the Undercity, a maze of ancient tunnels forgotten by time. The sound of running water filled the air. Above them, explosions shook the ceiling. The Empire's defenses had activated. Liara looked at him, worry in her eyes. "Even if we escape the palace, how will we survive beyond the walls?" Ethan touched the side of his wrist communicator, its small red light blinking faintly. "Because I didn't come here alone," he said quietly. High above the planet, hidden beyond the clouds, something enormous stirred. In the cold silence of orbit, a shape began to emerge from cloaking. A Titan-class human warship, the UHS Valkyrian, humanity's most powerful vessel, its dark hull stretched for miles, armed with weapons that could level continents. The moment Ethan's signal reached it, alarms blared on its bridge. "Commander Cade's beacon active," said the tactical officer. "He's requesting extraction under hostile fire." Captain Mira Solis stood from her chair. "Then we move," she said. "Bring the Valkyrian into atmosphere." The ship roared to life. The clouds burned as its engines ignited. The sky above the Zenthari capital turned from gold to fire. Down below, the ground shook violently. The alien citizens looked up in horror as the enormous shadow descended. "What is that?" shouted a guard. "It's impossible!" Ethan and Liara reached the final gate. Soldiers surrounded them, weapons raised. "Surrender, human!" shouted General Threx, his armor glowing under the crimson light. "The skies belong to us." Ethan raised his head, his voice calm. "Not anymore." The clouds above split apart, and the Valkyrian appeared like a god descending from the heavens. Its engines thundered, its cannons locked on the palace walls. Liara's eyes widened. "By the stars," she whispered. "Your world built that?" Ethan nodded slowly. "We build when we must. We fight when we have to." The soldiers froze, their weapons trembling. The Emperor himself stepped onto the balcony above, his face pale as he stared at the warship blotting out the sun. "Open the gates," Ethan shouted. "Let us go, or you'll see why Deathworlders are feared." For a long moment, no one moved. Then the Emperor lowered his head slightly, a silent command. The gate doors opened with a metallic groan. Ethan guided Liara through the open path. The wind from the descending warship whipped through their hair. The Valkyrian's ramp lowered, and a squad of human marines in black armor stepped out, forming a wall of protection. Captain Solis stepped forward, her voice sharp. "Commander, you're a mess." Ethan smiled faintly. "Just another diplomatic mission," he said. She glanced at Liara, her eyes narrowing slightly. "And this?" Ethan's voice was firm. "She's coming with us. She's proof that peace is still possible." Solis nodded once. "Then we'll keep her safe." Behind them, General Threx growled. "You think you can just take her? She's the Emperor's blood." Ethan turned, his gaze hard as steel. "Then tell the Emperor his daughter chose her own path." The ramp closed, sealing them inside. The Valkyrian rose higher, engines thundering. The alien city below looked smaller and smaller as the clouds swallowed it whole. Inside the ship, Liara stood by the viewport, staring down at her world. "They'll call me a traitor," she whispered. Ethan stood beside her. "Or a hero," he said softly. "Depends who writes the history." She turned to him, her silver eyes filled with emotion. "You risked everything for me." Ethan looked at her quietly. "No," he said. "I risked everything for the truth." The stars unfolded around them as the warship broke free of the planet's pull. Behind them, fleets across the galaxy received the transmission of what had happened, a human commander standing beside an alien princess, a warship of Earth hovering above an empire's capital, and one simple message sent across every channel. Humanity does not conquer worlds, humanity changes them. The galaxy would never forget that day, and as Liara watched the stars through the viewport, she felt something new within her, a spark of hope and a love that no border, no empire, no species could ever destroy. The Valkyrian drifted through orbit like a silent giant, its dark hull reflecting the twin suns of Zynar. Below it, the alien world glowed, half in shadow, half in light. The crew moved. With purpose, their eyes fixed on the command deck where two figures now stood side by side. Commander Ethan Cade stared at the planet, his jaw set, his uniform was torn, his arm wrapped in a bandage, but his eyes burned bright with resolve. Beside him, Princess Liara stood in a silver gown borrowed from the ship's archives. Her crown was gone, replaced by courage. Captain Solis approached quietly. "Command says the Emperor's fleet is moving," she reported. "Dozens of ships are forming around the capital." Ethan nodded slowly. "He's going to try to take her back." Liara's hands clenched. "He will destroy everything before admitting he was wrong," she whispered. Ethan turned to her, his voice gentle. "Then let's show him what humans mean when we say peace." Down below, the Zenthari fleet rose through the clouds, their silver vessels shining like daggers against the sky. At their center, the royal flagship carried the Emperor himself. His voice crackled across the intercom channels, cold and heavy. "Return my daughter, or I will burn your ship from the heavens." Ethan looked at Solis. "Patch me through." The transmission flickered to life. Ethan's image appeared on every Zenthari display, his voice calm, commanding. "Your Majesty, this isn't a battle you can win," he said. "You know it, and I know it. But if you fire, you will start a war that will destroy both our worlds." The Emperor's face twisted with anger. "You dare lecture me, human? You come to my world, defy my counsel, steal my daughter." Ethan stepped forward, She's not stolen. She chose, he said. And if you open your eyes, you'll see that she chose what's right. The Emperor froze, his gaze shifting to Liara. Her voice trembled but held strength. Father, please, she said. Look at what you're doing. Look at what fear has turned us into. I saw how he fought, how he spared our warriors. He isn't out. Their enemy. The Emperor's expression faltered, but the High Counselor whispered behind him, He's manipulating Her Majesty. End this before it spreads. The Emperor's hand hovered over the firing command. The Zenthari fleet charged their weapons. The Valkyrians' defense systems powered up in reply. Alarms echoed across the bridge. Captain Solis looked at Ethan. Orders? Ethan's voice was calm. No one fires until they do. Seconds passed like hours. The stars outside shimmered. A single mistake could ignite the galaxy. Then Liara stepped forward. She pressed the intercom and spoke directly to the fleet. People of Zynar, she said, her voice echoing across every ship. I am your princess, but I am also a daughter of the stars. We were taught to fear Deathworlders, but I have seen the truth. Humanity isn't made of monsters. They are made of hope. The crews aboard the alien ships hesitated. Their weapons remained charged, but their hearts wavered. Ethan placed a hand over his chest and said, Humanity extends peace, not threat. Then he gave a small nod to Solis, who transmitted a universal signal. Across the Valkyrian's hull, massive panels opened to reveal thousands of relief capsules, medicine, food, and technology. Gasps filled the comms as Zenthari officers realized what they were seeing. They came prepared to help us, one whispered. The Emperor's gaze softened. The High Counselor shouted, They're tricking you! But the Emperor no longer listened. He lowered his hand slowly. Cease fire, he commanded. The entire Zenthari fleet powered down. The hum of energy faded into silence. Liara exhaled, her knees weak with relief. Ethan's eyes met hers. You did it, he said softly. She smiled through tears. No, she whispered. We did it. Moments later, a small transport launched from the royal ship and approached the Valkyrian. On board was the Emperor himself. When he entered the human warship's command deck, every Marine stood at attention. He looked at Ethan for a long moment, then turned to his daughter. You remind me of your mother, he said quietly. She believed love could change the stars. His voice broke slightly. Perhaps she was right. He turned back to Ethan. Earth Commander, you have my respect. You may take my daughter wherever your destiny leads. But know this, if you betray her trust, no world will hide you. Ethan bowed slightly. Understood, Majesty. The Emperor nodded once, then looked around the human ship in quiet awe. Perhaps the galaxy is not as divided as we were taught, he said. Perhaps the Deathworlders are not what we feared. As his transport departed, the Valkyrian rose higher into the light of the suns. Liara stood beside Ethan at the viewport, watching the stars unfold. Her voice was soft. Do you think peace will last? Ethan smiled faintly. Peace never lasts on its own, he said. It needs people brave enough to keep fighting for it. Liara turned to him, her eyes bright. Then we fight together. He reached out, taking her hand gently. Together, he said. The Valkyrian drifted beyond the planet's shadow, its engines glowing blue. Behind it, the Zenthari world shimmered like a jewel beneath the twin suns. Two species, once enemies, now bound by a promise, and as the human warship vanished into the endless stars, the galaxy whispered a new legend, the alien princess and the human warrior. The day love stopped a war.